Greetings, people of Earth. Welcome back. My name is Jax, and today we are talking about personal relationships and how to manage these things healthily. Um, Butchered that, but that's okay. Basically, I was thinking about the different kinds of relationships we have in our lives and whether they are romantic, just familial, whether they're your friends, whether they're colleagues and coworkers, acquaintances, friends of friends. So there are different like tiers, I guess, or different levels in terms of how bonded you are in a relationship, how connected you are. And each one of these relationships kind of requires a different touch depending on who you're dealing with and your previous experience, the temperament of the people involved in these relationships. And yeah, I basically just wanted to talk a little bit about them because I feel like I need to basically just say this stuff for myself, and I thought maybe you can gain some interesting insight, or you can just, watch me as if you are a scientist watching a monkey, and through the observation, through observing the primitive animal, you might be able to figure out some things that you need to do in your life. Who knows? We will see. First of all, I think the first relationships that I'll talk about are the ones that tend to be the closest for me, and that's family. And with my family, I am pretty open. I'm pretty communicative, very honest. My immediate family, like the core people who I consider my family, they generally know how I'm doing. They can tell just at a glance how I'm doing in a general day or a week. They can look at me and be like, "Oh, you've had a rough week, haven't you?" And they tend to know exactly what's going on just by reading my facial expressions and how I'm acting in a certain environment. These people tend to know a lot about my inner workings. They know an awful lot about the other relationships that I have in my life. They are usually pretty well informed about what is going on and those kinds of things. So yeah, they're the core people. I handle them pretty. It's a pretty easy, seamless relationship with these people. It tends to just involve really open, honest communication, letting them know how I'm doing, how I'm feeling. If there's ever a problem in our relationship, it tends to get sorted out pretty quickly because I bring it to them and I say, "Hey, like I'm not doing so well, or something in our relationship isn't exactly right. It's not optimal." And the problems are resolved pretty quickly. Like it's a pretty quick and fast-paced process. So yeah, I don't tend to have a lot of problems in my inner core circle of family. Extended family, there's always going to be like disagreements or political quandaries and all kinds of stuff like that. But for the most part, there really isn't a lot of stuff like that going on. Um, yeah, so I'm pretty happy with my family relationships. I think they're pretty strong and solid. Um, there are people that would be considered in my core family that I don't really associate a whole lot with. I like to say like arm's length, because sometimes you realize that people in your life, just because they are there for some blood, quotient, they have some kind of relation to you by blood, that doesn't actually mean anything. I really dislike this idea of like, I am your great grandfather, you need to show deference to me and have familial piety just because, I was one of the people that, eventually created you. I don't agree with that kind of stuff. You don't have to feel like you owe anybody anything, especially if everyone in the situation is an adult, in which case you are all fully formed adults and you get to choose the relationship you have. It doesn't get to be dictated, and you don't have to be told what your relationship is. So I don't know, just pick and choose. Family to me doesn't mean blood. It just means the people who you are bonded with and very close with. Many of the people I consider part of my family aren't blood related to me in any way. So just keep that in mind. The next category I want to talk about is sort of the best friends and the people, basically the chosen family in that regard. They're the people that I absolutely love. My relationship with some of them goes back almost to birth, like even just knowing each other since babies. Um, and, these people I do consider, very close to being family, if not being family. And generally, again, these people I've almost never had problems with because I've chosen them. You're always going to have problems with your family because just by being in proximity doesn't mean you're going to get along. But with the best friend category, generally, these are people that you get along with so perfectly and you kind of see the world the same way as them. And so, for me anyway, my best friends and I have really never had disagreements. We've never had fights or any kind of strife or misunderstandings because we get each other on such a good level. These are people that, if I was born in another life and they were born in another life, we would probably find each other in the end, um, just because we are so incredibly compatible. I actually consider one of my cousins on this level because her and I just get along so well. And we've always joked that, even if we weren't family, we would still be each other's best friends because we vibe so well and the connection's so good. And so with these relationships, it really doesn't take a lot of maintenance. I'm really lucky that a lot of my best friends, we can go many weeks, months, whatever, without talking, and as soon as we're brought back together, it's as if we never were separated. And I think that's a really special connection. Some friendships, disappear over time. You get the high school friends or the friends you meet in college, and you kind of drift apart, or maybe you get into a relationship and they get into a relationship and you just never have time for each other and you just kind of fade away. Those relationships, I guess we'll talk a little bit about them in the next tier or the next list. But with these best friends, I've always found that time never detracts from what we're doing and the time we spend together, which is really amazing. Yeah, and so yeah, these are the low maintenance, just people that just vibe and they just work, and you got to be really appreciative of them. I think the next tier is sort of what I would just call as friends. Oh, we're friends. Oh, Mark. Oh yeah, yeah, Mark and I are friends. And the friends category is people you get along with in the moment, and you might end up going out drinking with them, or go watch a movie together, like play some video games, whatever. Like, you spend time together, you text. Maybe it's a totally online relationship, maybe it's not. um, some of the online relationships I have, I feel like I've shared an awful lot with these people and they know me intimately and I know them pretty well as well. So I would consider those people sort of a step above friends. But when I think of friends, I think of a lot of my high school and college friends who I see now and then, I interact with. If I saw them at the bar, we would spend the whole night together hanging out, drinking, like whatever, going out dancing, etc. Um, but these aren't people that really like share, we don't share our lives with each other, not to a high extent. We're very friendly and like we're very it's always great to like run into a friendly face and strike up a conversation like, oh, how's your parents, like how's this going, how's your sister, that kind of thing. But it's really like there's no real intimacy in the relationship, and the relationship kind of involves just having some kind of shared thing that we were brought together doing. And so that's why I say school. I have some soccer friends like this, people that basically we became friendly with each other because we had a shared activity that we were doing. And so it wasn't exactly a by choice kind of relationship. And yeah, it's just, I don't have a problem with them, but I don't see them regularly. It's not something that kind of happens. And these people can often become close friends. It takes effort and it takes work on both sides of the relationship, but it's definitely something that's possible if that's what you're interested in, is what I would say. But Generally, I'm a little careful with friends because I think friends is the category that enemies are created out of. So this category of people in my life are the ones that tend to end up becoming problematic and difficult. And I know I just said like they're my enemies, but I don't really like that word. I would say more like adversarial people in my life. Like these people, you're brought together because of a shared whatever. You both golf, you both are in the same economics class, whatever. But more often than not, you can become unfriendly with these people, or these people can become unfriendly with you because they get to know you and they realize that like, oh, I don't actually like this person that much. And so that kind of like, I'm wary of these people. I'm a little cautious, and I'm like, oh, I don't really want to get too friendly with these people because sometimes I've been bit in the butt by this interaction. So I would just advocate being careful with friends. They have the opportunity to turn into really great like companions and like very friendly people with you, but they also have the opportunity to stab you in the back. So I don't know, maybe that's just me being a little bit overcautious and careful, but that's from my experience. So the next category, I think we'll just go straight into the adversarial, or the people that you don't really get along with. So these people tend to be, I don't know, these people start out in all kinds of different areas along the tier list, but they end up being adversaries. And I don't like to use the word enemy because I don't think it's good to see yourself as like the hero and you have an enemy. Like everybody has different motives, and like who are you to say that you're the good guy? And who are you to say that there is even a good guy and a bad guy? Really, it's just people. And people have different motives, and sometimes those motives sort of counteract each other. So the adversarial people, like I said, these people could start out as family. They could start out as best friends. They could start out as strangers, or just, just acquaintances or friends of friends. And for whatever reason, you do not vibe with this person. This person has energy you don't like. They treat other people in a certain way that you don't agree with. Maybe they treated one of your friends poorly. There are numerous ways that someone could become an adversarial person in your life. Maybe they have a bit of authority, and like maybe they're the gym attendant at your gym or something, and like you don't get along with them, and suddenly you have a adversarial relationship. Usually there's some kind of conflict, and there's some kind of relationship hurdle that both of you have agreed we can't get over. We can't move past this. We don't like each other. Sometimes it's one-sided. Sometimes you might have a friend of a friend who loves hanging out with you and this mutual friend, but you really don't like this friend of a friend. So sometimes it's one-sided. Like, you don't like this person, but they think you're great. But more often than not, both people are aware of each other not liking one another, and that creates this adversarial relationship. And generally you have to be a bit careful with these, especially if your relationships are all pretty co-intermingled. And what I mean by that is, if you live in like a small town and your family knows your best friends, and your friends, and your family's friends, your friend's family, if you're in a small town, your whole relationship sphere, like if you think of yourself at the middle, and then your immediate family and your friends, and like your sphere is much smaller if you live in a small town where everybody knows you, everyone knows your grandfather, everyone knows your dad. Like, those relationships become intertwined so much more quickly than if you live in a city of 1 million people. And so you kind of have to be cautious with having adversaries, because who knows, maybe your adversary is actually like your girlfriend's dad, or your your best friend's stepmother's sister. Like you end up getting these like really messy relationships that are all intermingled with one another, and that can make your life a living hell. I'm pretty fortunate in that the spheres of life, like my family, really isn't connected to any of my other relationships, and my friends aren't connected to my other relationships, and then my adversarial relationships aren't connected to pretty much any of my other relationships. So I'm pretty like my relationships are very independent of one another, which is nice because it adds a bit of simplicity. And so I don't have to worry about like my cousins interacting with my best friend, or I don't have to interact with like my adversaries aren't my, like school friends. Like I don't have that kind of connection, which I think is really nice. And I've heard from so many of you and from so many people where like your adversarial relationships are like directly tied to, like your stepdad, or, like just a horrible aunt, or whatever it is. Your relationships are like intertwined with people you have to see regularly, and that is incredibly frustrating, and it makes life a lot more difficult than it should be. So I'm sorry if you have an adversarial relationship with somebody you're closely tied to, but hopefully you're able to give them some distance, and you're able to sort of like separate from that kind of madness, because it's just a lot of work and it's unnecessary. And then sort of the final category that I view my world in is sort of the stranger or pedestrian category. And these are people like the bank teller at my bank, the grocery teller, most of the gym attendants and people I interact with at the gym. These people I try and be incredibly positive with. I try and be upbeat. Usually we're just talking about small talk, those kinds of things. Apologies, guys. I'm still getting over this annoying cough. But yeah, typically these are the bystanders, or I don't know. I kind of think of them as like NPCs, because I want to interact with these people and have a really good time with them, and make sure that like we're being positive and we're just making each other's days easier, because making each other's days harder is just, there's no point. There's no point being mean to your bank teller. There's no point, like honking your horn at like the person driving ahead of you and being all mean to them. There's no point in that kind of stuff. It makes people's day unnecessarily harder. And hopefully every interaction you have, you should be able to go home that night and look over the little interactions you had with people and be like, oh, that was nice. I hope they're, wherever they are, if they're back at their house, I hope they're thinking that they had a good day as well, because life is too short to fight about these kinds of things. So the pedestrian class, or the bystander class, or however you want to phrase it, they're just basically people that are in your life for like a fleeting moment, or maybe a short little period of every day. And I just try and treat these people with kindness and compassion. Sometimes like these people require help. These are the people that come up and say, oh, I'm so sorry, do you know how to get to like Market Street? I'll be like, oh yeah, you go this way and you turn around here and there you go. And so, you're just trying to be helpful. You're just trying to be there. You're trying to be their NPCs. When these people interact with you, just imagine yourself as like a computer character in a video game, where you're just being this little helpful little robot in their life. And you're like, oh yes, of course. Yeah, the bathroom is just down here over through there. Just look at it as trying to be helpful and trying to be a good human being for those relationships. So yeah, other than that, guys, that's sort of how I view many of the relationships in my life. I don't know. Relationships are sort of always shifting a little bit, always changing. As we grow and as we change, our relationship with other people does change. My relationship with my parents has changed over the last 20 years as I've become an adult and I've become independent, and, relationships like that are supposed to change, and you're supposed to make room for those kinds of things. And I think a lot of people, especially in the teenage and the young adult phase, do struggle with relationships with parents or with guardians and authority figures, because suddenly you've gained some authority yourself. And so the relationship does need to change, and there has to be some kind of give and pull and agreement and reciprocity within that relationship. So, but yeah, I think a lot of us struggle with changing relationships and dealing with adversarial relationships. So, I don't know. This was basically just like my word vomit, being able to just get this out and just kind of view my relationships in a specific way that I think is helpful for myself. So, like I said at the beginning, if you found looking at the primitive monkey, myself, being helpful, and as the scientist you're sort of making notes and you're like, oh, very interesting, the primitive creature has some complexity to him. I hope it helped. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. As always, I will talk to you tomorrow, and I hope you have a beautiful day. I look forward to your comments. Leave them down below. And yes, good morning and good luck.